he will also joining our panel discussion. And one panelist here, Mr. Jeet 딘드사. Thank you very much. So since we are all ready for the active panel discussions, I would like to hand over microphone to Professor Jinam-Jun for our moderating.
Thank you. I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to the speakers. In this time of COVID-19 chaos, we have desperately needed the insight for the future. They made great presentations. They tried to share their insight with us. Let me first briefly review their presentations. Keith made a thorough review of the impact of COVID-19 on the global medical travel market. He made an important message for us: minimize the impact, exploit the opportunities. We could improve our reputation because we were effective in controlling the COVID-19. We need to develop a new message concerning our competitive advantage. Klaus analyzed the impact of COVID-19 on the medical travel market. He also talked about the medical travel market outlooks. He foresees that Germany would be in a better relative position post-COVID-19. Laura talked about wellness tourism market in South Korea. After analyzing the impact of COVID-19 on K-wellness tourism market, she suggested the future direction of this market. Laszlo cited the research report from Wellness Tourism Association. He mentioned the importance of a complex, integrative, and holistic approach. I like his suggestion on take-home message. He suggested us to be well-being archaeologists. I really like this word. We need to identify local wellness resources and turn them into global wellness tourism products. Jeet, you have been in this medical tourism market for several years. Could you give us your opinion? If you have any questions, you can ask the speaker.
Yeah, sure. So a little bit about me. My expertise has primarily been in the medical beauty tourism market. And often when it comes to medical tourism, that sort of overshadows all other types of tourism here in Korea. Korea is known as a beauty, for its beauty tourism market. And with wellness, it's well worth over trillions of dollars. 4.7 was one figure I've heard. And the government would really like to make Korea a competitive destination for wellness. And I've seen some great presentations from Laszlo, Laura, and Klaus to gather some insights about this. Now, if I can kind of impart some wisdom of why I think South Korea really hit a home run when it came to cosmetic surgery, dentistry, skincare, and beauty tourism, it sort of, I want to say, boils down to two factors, such as social proof and validation that people recognize in popular culture that Korea is the go-to place for beauty tourism, whether it comes from popular culture and films and Korean pop stars that are making their way around the globe, as well as competition. In our industry, we're trying to kill each other. There's over 400 to 500 clinics battling for market share and space. There's facilitators constantly battling with each other, and that's pushing and driving a lot of innovation. Now, wellness here in Korea still seems a little bit uncontested because it's not really been packaged and marketed and players kind of organizing themselves in such. I think it's really exciting what Laura's doing in that she's sort of pioneering this space here domestically. And Laszlo in Europe, you know, he's been working with destinations that have already been well entrenched and seasoned as wellness destinations. So I'm wondering, you know, how can we make South Korea a wellness, like how can we put it on the map? Like, how can we make the next Eat, Pray, Love filmed over here and market that as a destination where in the minds of people around the world, they associate wellness with Korea. How can we do that? And I'd like to maybe ask Laura, since she's already in the market trying to pioneer this space.
Thanks for putting me on the spot. Thank you for your question. It's a $1 million question, right? Honestly, I'm probably not the best person to ask because I'm kind of I'm more of a ready, shoot, aim kind of person. So I just get into it and figure it out halfway through. What I would say is, in terms of wellness, it's really undefined in Korea. That's something that we have seen time and time again. What is wellness? If you ask my Korean friends, and I often do, I say, what is wellness? They'll say, food, yoga, meditation. And there's a real disconnect between what wellness is and what wellness looks like. And that has been in part because of social media. It's been in part because it is so integrated, so it doesn't seem to be like it could be wellness. And I think I really loved what Laszlo said earlier, and big fan of your work, by the way. And I really loved, the new parts of what we can see in terms of wellness contents coming out. So is sober the new wellness? And looking at these different aspects of what could be termed wellness. But it's a very difficult one. Personally, what I would love to see is taking traditional Korean culture, traditional Korean language and resources, oceans, mountains, and then utilizing what we have here already and developing some really beautiful contents that are being sent out into the world. And how do we do that? I'm not a marketer, I have no idea. But what we're doing here is just trying to develop those contents to build up a reputation and to come out strong when we do in fact get to come out onto the other side. And I would love to hear actually if anyone else has any kind of comments on that, because I'm the least experienced from all of our fantastic speakers today. So, wonderful question, but I'm also curious about the answer.
Laura, do you have any question to the speakers?
So actually, I do have a question to Laszlo again. I hate the idea of gin and tonic yoga. Hate it. And I'm definitely not, a severe yogi, but I think my personal practice is from a place of yoga is a way to connect the body and mind. And for me, that's really a personal experience, and that exactly touches on your point again of wellness is different for everyone. And that's what I have been preaching to everyone I pass gets a sticker. Wellness is different for me because it's all based on what we already have inside. So my question would be, where do you draw the line between individual wellness, what we see as wellness, and this beautiful new branch of wellness tourism products, and when does it become a gimmick? When is it just for fun and no longer wellness related?
Well, thank you, Laura. To some people, gym can also do the same that yoga does to others. That's just depends how you look at it. No, and seriously, I think this is I think for you the last part of your question is probably the most tricky one, which is when it becomes just fun. And I somehow quite hesitant about why fun is not part of wellness. Why is just fun is something different, or not good enough, or not enough in general. I believe that what we really need to be aware, and this is industry job, this is government job, is a planner's job, strategist's job, that we have a lot of different services, lots of different assets, different resources, and travel or leisure activities in general, not regardless, they contribute to the well-being of the user or the consumer. That's a fact. The contribution to your state of well-being. whatever you do, family visits, going to conferences, eating out, just have a walk in the forest, looking over the ocean, all those activities would contribute one way or another. Short-term, short-lived, but they contribute to your well-being. That's why we need to separate services as well as communication and related marketing from anything that is related to contribution but not labeled, and those which are de facto labeled, like the Anandi, going there and taking treatments. And I don't think just fun would be or should be called wellness, but we know that it does contribute. So a good laughter is part of healing. Having a positive outlook is part of a happier lifestyle and often longer life. So just fun is not certainly a wellness service, but helps to be in a better state or a more well state. Probably is not quite an answer to your question, but what I really find painful even to look at, not necessarily the Jina yoga or the Biren yoga, Klaus, for you, but very much so the mishmashing what's happening at the moment, that now anything and everything is wellness, and now we're squeezing everything under the wellness umbrella, and it's trillions and billions and all that, none of which is justified by actual data, but it's now becoming a lovely label that we can sell anything and everything. And that really puzzles me, and I'm really tired of all this. But there you go. Don't forget, we always have labels. 10 years ago, it was eco or sustainable. Now it's wellness. And I'm sure 5 years' time, we will have another toy that industry or people will be playing with. But this is why I'm stressing service providers as well as government to please don't fall for these lovely issues, because that when you call someone Generation W, which is Generation Wellness, that's, to me, it's very alarming. Because either you're doing it or you're not doing it. When you do it for fashion, because if your generation suggests that the next generation will be something else, and the previous was something else again, then we devalue the heritage and tradition of the ginger bank, we devalue and we just reuse as a label, as a fashion item, or as a new trend, per se, the spirituality. And I don't really buy that. We are at the moment working with several service providers in a Central American country, and every one of them we hand-holdingly going through how you can improve the well-being of your guests, but we're not calling that as wellness trips. We know that in the end of the day, end of the trip, the guests will say, it was just a bit different. It was memorable. We felt happy. We were content. We were balanced. We had harmony. And that was the language that customers speak. They don't talk about well-being. They don't talk about wellness. They talk about some other measures.
Thank you, Laszlo. Now I will open up the floor for any questions. We have already received questions from the online participants. One question is for Keith. You have seen South Korea's ambitious efforts to develop medical tourism industry for last several years. From your perspective, what is the area we need to improve further? Keith?
Yeah, thank you, Keenan. I think, as I made, I think very strongly the point in the presentation, your country is perfectly positioned to exploit this opportunity. And I think if you look at the message, at the moment, there's no really clear message about what Korean medical tourism is about. If you just go to the Korea Medical Tourism site, take a good look at that and say, well, what does it actually say about Korea that makes us different? And it doesn't say anything. It just says, this is what we do. This is the stuff we can do. You really got to look at what is the message about clinical, you've been on the front page of newspapers worldwide that are really kind of conveying a message about the clinical excellence, the expertise that Korea offers, and about this whole thing about safety and reassurance. And it's coming up with a brand, a message that really sells that, and then applying it across kind of not just about across the hospitals and the clinics, but getting your airline involved, your national airline involved. Incheon Airport could be the safest airport in the world to travel to. So it's bringing a whole bunch of people together and say, how do we really get that message across? How do we exploit this opportunity? Mm-hmm. It is about branding, about thinking about what you say from this point onwards about your country in terms of what it has to offer in healthcare.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Thank you, Keith. And there were so many questions posted. However, we run out of time, so I'd like to ask the last question to Klaus. You mentioned that demand from GCC would decrease. What are the reasons for your forecast?
That is actually the providers' expectations that we surveyed, and several of them expect the demand from GCC countries to decrease for a number of reasons. I'd like to point out at least two. First of all, I think we have to live, or the providers here expect to live with COVID-19, at least in the medium term, and that means it's going to affect travel from the various source regions differently. To give you a nice quote, which I think puts it quite nicely, one of the providers said, well, they don't expect demand from CIS countries to diminish because customers from CIS countries, they are accustomed to hardship, and they're not deterred by COVID-19. They'll find their way to their treatment regardless of COVID-19. I've mentioned that earlier, we have people driving to Germany by car to get the treatment. Whereas patients from GCC countries may be less culturally inclined to travel in the face of adversity. That's one thing that providers suspect in Germany, and the other thing, or the price that we surveyed rather, and the other point is that it's also more difficult for them to travel since they're traveling in larger groups. They're usually, at least the ones that go to Germany, they travel with families. And for them, it's even riskier or more difficult to travel as COVID-19 continues to be with us probably for at least another 12 months. So at least in that time span, they don't anticipate demand from GCC countries to increase and to rather stay low in the future also.
Thank you, Klaus. Yeah, it makes sense. Now I understand why. It looks like we will run out of time. So I guess we'll finish here. I deeply appreciate the speakers and the audience. Thank you for your contribution. Thank you.